Mr. Rohit Vyas, welcome again to ITV Gold. I truly appreciate you giving us so much time here.
Thank you again for inviting me on your show.
Of course, we have so much to talk about in politics and what's happening in the nation, so let's go right into it. We are still talking about elections 2020 while the elections have been over. So just starting off this interview, let's discuss these battleground states and what's still happening there. There is a recount of votes to certify this election, and we're looking at states like Georgia, Pennsylvania, Nevada, and Arizona again. So my question to you is, what are we actually looking for, and what is happening in these states, and why is there a need for a recount?
There is going to be no recount really in either Pennsylvania or Arizona. There are court cases over there in those two states which are already being dismissed. They've been thrown out by several lower courts already. The Trump administrations or the Trump campaigns, assertions that there has been fraud, electoral misappropriation, if you will, that type of thing.
Right.
Much of it has been dismissed. In fact, the latest news is that Trump's personal attorneys in Pennsylvania don't want to be a part of this anymore, have said basically there's no way this can be reversed because Joe Biden has won the election and the count is good. So basically, I think it's a dead end in Pennsylvania. I think it will be a dead end in Arizona. Georgia remains. Georgia, the Secretary of State there, has already announced a recount by hand. That's going to take several days, obviously, to recount every single vote by hand. But I don't expect the outcome to change over there. So quite frankly, the elections are behind us, in my estimation. And I think no matter what the Trump campaign wants to do going forward, there is going to be no other outcome other than the fact that Joe Biden has won this election and is the next president of the United States.
I have to continue asking you more on this because just today, President Trump tweeted a lot again on election fraud. He's claiming that he has won the election. What kind of a message is President Trump trying to, send out by not conceding, by still claiming that he has won the election while recounts are not going into his favor?
I can't read his mind, obviously, but
Right.
It's within his rights to say that he thinks he won. It's within his rights to challenge any results, but he is losing all the challenges. And I think after a while, he, in my opinion, will just give in. We've got information from insiders in the White House that he has, in fact, said he knows he's lost the election, but just doesn't want to concede. That's his right. He doesn't have to personally concede. But in the matter of transition, the matter of things going from one administration to another, he will have to at some point concede whether he wants to or not and allow the new administration to come in. So the message he's sending, I'm not quite sure what it is, except that he's never been a loser. He has never been used to being a loser, even if he's lost in his business enterprises, for instance. A lot of people in New York and New Jersey know how many of his businesses have not been successful, but he has never admitted that he was not successful in business. For instance, there were questions in these past couple of years about the bankruptcies his casinos and hotels, for instance,
Right.
filed in New Jersey, for instance. And he always talked about it as being a loophole in the law. He used the law to the advantage of his corporations, where he's right. There is a provision for bankruptcy, Chapter 11, Chapter 7, the different types of corporate bankruptcies. It's allowed under the law. And he says he has used the law to the fullest benefit of the business enterprise. And he would not admit, even in those instances, that he had lost his businesses. One of his executive, I think his chairman or the president of Trump Plaza in Atlantic City, was recently on one of the major networks and talked about that. And he said specifically that Donald Trump will never admit he's a loser, even if he loses. So that's all it is. I think, he doesn't want to be seen as a loser, especially by his base of 70 to 73 million voters who did vote for him. And that wasn't enough to put him into the presidency again. But he just doesn't want to admit it. That's all.
But this is coming in the way of this transitioning process. Just today, they are declaring that it's going to be a matter of national security if a president-elect Joe Biden and his team doesn't have access to classified information. As we speak, President-elect Joe Biden is hosting a national security briefing of his own with some of the old advisors. My question to you is, why is this such a big matter of national security? And what do we do in this situation if President Trump's team doesn't allow them any access up until January 20th?
Yeah, that's a good question, and that's the question everybody's trying to answer and figure out. President-elect Biden himself is trying to figure a way around it, and therefore what he has done is, because he's not being given these, well, first of all, to answer your question directly, it is extremely important when there is a president-elect and a new team coming in, and it's been the tradition for ever since the United States was created. It's been a tradition for an outgoing administration to allow for a smooth transition to an incoming administration. Much of it is to do with the security of the United States, whether it's food security, health security, foreign policy security, national security, meaning watching out for foreign entities that are interested in disrupting the US or attacking the US in any way. It is extremely important that there be a smooth transition. And what that entails is that a security team from the current White House would sit with the security team from the incoming White House, and they would exchange notes, they would exchange everything confidential that is necessary to continue the smooth running of the country. This must happen as soon as a victor is declared, because you need time so that when the new administration comes in on the 20th of January,
Right.
they are primed and ready to run the country without any risk to the very existence of the country itself. It is extremely critical. Now, with no cooperation, and it's supposed to be the general office in the government in Washington, D.C.,
Right.
that is supposed to allow and write off on this signing off of the transition, so that there is a smooth transition. That hasn't happened yet because everybody's taking orders from President Trump right now. What the Biden administration is trying to do is to assemble people who are well versed in intelligence matters anyway, but who are not part of the official machinery right now. So what they're trying to do is at least get a gauge of what to expect, what not to expect, etc. So when they have this meeting, which is with unofficial people from the intelligence community, the armed services community, things like that, but they're not official government people, at least they get some kind of a feel of what to expect, what not to expect. This is a backup measure, which has never happened before in the history of the United States, that is being carried out. But I think it's very smart and very prudent, because a lot of these people wouldn't know what's happening. Many of them still have security clearances at the top levels. And so it would be very useful to listen to what they have to say. I'd like to point out also that Vice President-elect Kamala Harris does have more insight, luckily, because she's a senator and she's on the Senate Intelligence Committee right now. So she will be able to gather a lot of information that the Intelligence Committee would be briefed on, and be able to share that with the incoming president. So that's a good thing that she's there. She's still a senator until she becomes the vice president. And so that's a very useful component in all of this.
You know, while we're also talking about this, it's just not the national security which is at stake. We're talking about COVID-19 information, which is also being withheld by the Trump team from the Joe Biden team. Just today, President-elect Biden said that more people will die of COVID-19 if the COVID-19 information is not shared by the White House with their team. The American Medical Association, AMA, is also urging President Trump to share this information. Where are we going with this? What does this truly indicate?
Yeah, as a matter of fact, the American Medical Association, the Nurses Association, and a couple of other associations involved in the medical industry. The Hospitals Association, yes, that's the other one, the Hospitals Association. All their CEOs have come together, and everybody has signed off on a letter to President Trump asking him to please have his team share with the incoming administration everything that we know about COVID, the therapeutics, the vaccines. 2 vaccines are already out this week, or at least the pharma companies have come out with preliminary results that are very promising. In the case of Pfizer, it's a 90% effective vaccine. In the case of Moderna, it's 94.5% effective. Now, the question here is, okay, you have the vaccine ready. Now you need the machinery and the components to store these vaccines, transport them to distribution sites and then to distribute them effectively and with speed to reach everybody in the US population. A massive, massive, massive job. And this requires coordination right now between the two administrations, the outgoing one and the incoming one. If there is no cooperation right now, there is no sharing of this health intelligence with the new administration, there's going to be a big problem. Biden has already warned that they're going to be behind by about a month and 20 days or 2 months in trying to figure out a distribution mechanism. That means you can easily lose another 150,000, 200,000 people. They could die because there's no vaccine out there that can reach them. There is a vaccine, but the distribution system is not in place to be able to get to them. That's what he's trying to talk about. That's what these CEOs who've signed all these urgent memos to President Trump are talking about. And they know. These are doctors out there, these are hospitals, these are nurses who are fighting. Right now, in at least a dozen states, if not more, hospitals are overwhelmed.
Yeah.
They are so overwhelmed that the individual governors, Republican and Democrat, have begun to issue their own directives on lockdowns, etc. They're trying to fight this thing by themselves because even they don't have any clear direction from the federal government right now.
Right.
And what Biden wants to do is to have a clear plan from the federal government once his administration steps in. So everything is coordinated, and together we fight this pandemic.
What do you think will happen on January 20th?
Are you asking me if Trump decides not to leave? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah.
That's what you're asking? This question was asked of a lot of veteran reporters, many of them retired actually this week. And their answer was, and I have the same answer, we've never been through this before. Technically, at noon on the 20th of January, okay, Joe Biden will be sworn in as the new president of the United States. That means Donald Trump, whether he concedes or not, ceases to become the president of the United States. He also is no longer a resident of the White House, which means he is either a trespasser, and I'm giving you the technicalities of how this would work if that were the scenario. I don't think it's going to happen, by the way, but he would be a trespasser, or he would be a guest, or he'd be an uninvited guest, and he'd be asked to leave. Usually in a case like that, you would have federal marshals, the U.S. Marshal Service would be tasked with that. Because don't forget, Secret Service can't do it. Secret Service is there to protect the incoming president, and that'll be a stepped up presence of Secret Service. And the Secret Service is also tasked with protecting for life an outgoing president. So the Secret Service, many people think, oh, Secret Service will pick him up. No, you can't do that. It's the U.S. Marshal Service, which usually would be involved, or federal marshals would be involved in things like evictions and that type of thing, that they would come in and take someone out or escort them out. I don't expect that scenario. I don't think President Trump would even think of that. I think all we're facing right now is a situation where he does not want to admit he is lost. And in all fairness to him, many people do believe he's done a great job in his time as president of the United States. Many people credit all the economic achievements in the country to him.
Right.
And so that has to be part of his legacy. And I don't think he'd want to leave or be asked to leave in that kind of manner. So I don't think we can even worry about a scenario like that. And most of the veteran correspondents who've been asked about this issue in this past week, just as you're asking me, have the same view and a very similar view that we don't expect something like that to ever happen. We hope not.
What lessons do you think the Biden administration should take from the outgoing Trump administration in terms of, especially when you're looking at the pre-COVID time, what lessons do you think they should take from them?
I think they already know what they're going to do.
Right.
They're not going to take lessons. They might look at the good things, and I'm sure they will.
Right.
Every administration looks at the good things of another. And I think, Joe Biden himself has already indicated. For one thing, Joe Biden has already talked about, and it's all private discussion apparently, but it's being quoted in various media, is that he's already said that he doesn't want people in the Justice Department that he starts to put together. He doesn't want them going after President Trump for anything in the past, etc. He doesn't want to be focused on that at all. He says, bygones are bygones, let's move ahead. And Joe Biden's going to be one of those types of administrators who will look ahead to solving issues that are now before the country. If there's something good that he has seen in the Trump administration's workings, he is definitely going to incorporate those into his own administration. For instance, if they take a closer look at how the stock market behaved in the 4 years of the Trump administration, and if everything was right financially with what they were doing, I'm sure they would want to emulate that. They'd want to have the same sort of system in place during his administration. So President-elect Biden is a very open-minded individual,
Right.
a very caring individual, a highly experienced individual, someone who's able to reach out across the aisle to anybody. He has shown this in the past. He is showing it now, even now in the transition, despite what he is facing. And going forward, he will. I don't think he's going to actually look for good lessons in everything, to answer your question more broadly. He will look for good lessons, something to learn from everything, and then put that into effect and practice in his own administration. That's what I know of Joe Biden myself, having covered him for many, many years and decades indeed. Yeah.
How much attention do you think they're going to put on stabilizing the economy?
Oh, they will immediately do that. He's been talking about that. He says, in fact, he has already been saying that what's an essential component to stabilizing the economy as they come in, and immediately right now, is to have another relief package, a COVID relief package, such as the CARES Act. There has to be another one immediately,
Right.
if there has to be a smooth economic recovery in the United States. Because while the stock market is up and sharply up on the one hand, and almost back at pre-pandemic levels, if not more than pre-pandemic levels, on the other hand, there's half of America that's suffering terribly economically.
Yeah.
And some of the most grim footage we've seen this week as we speak has come out of Dallas, Texas, where you see these long lines of cars at food banks, stretching for miles, 6 or 7 mile long lines at food banks to get food, basic necessities. So there's two Americas right now. Joe Biden is very cognizant of that, very mindful of that, and has been talking even before he takes over, pleading with Congress, please come up with a package. Even before I come in, we come in and we rule, we take over the administration. Please come up with a package, help the American people. So his whole thinking is the economy, caring for the common man. I mean, you'll see a lot of blue-collar workers who will eventually be very happy with Joe Biden because he's a blue-collar man. He really is one of them. And I foresee a lot of good relations between him, labor unions, even police unions, things like that. They're all going to come around to this man and realize that he'll be a great leader.
You know, I just have a couple of questions left for you. I have to ask you about this big news today, the drawdown of troops from Iraq and Afghanistan. President Trump has declared this. We're looking at, you know, the troops going from 4,000 to 2,500 in some of the areas. Why is President Trump doing this right now, basically less than 2 months before the inauguration?
I guess he's trying to do what he can to build his legacy as as quickly as he can now before he leaves. This is actually a sign of the fact that he's accepting that he will have to be leaving office on the 20th of January. So I see a good thing in it. The drawdown of troops he has been talking about for a while. He never wanted to leave troops there. Also, to his credit, he was not a warmonger president. Donald Trump was not a warmonger president. There has been no war under him. He did not want to go to war with anybody. And if you start to analyze some of the stuff he did, even talking to people like Kim Jong-un, even trying to converse with Putin, although the manner in which he spoke of his own intelligence, etc., in front of the former KGB chief is absolutely deplorable by any standard whatsoever. But there is still, I think, a good component to much of what he wanted to do and leave behind as his legacy. And this business of bringing troops back home, both from Iraq and Afghanistan, he has wanted to do all along. He didn't want to have any American troops in those areas. It was a mistake getting into both those areas with American troops to fight a battle that should never have been an American battle to begin with. And I think that's what he wants people to remember. And so, I think this is a last-minute push. Let me get people out while I'm still president of the United States. And I think he just wants to build on his legacy, and he's also basically conceding without conceding.
But isn't this a threat on national security again as we're speaking, and the fact that they're not sharing any of this information with the Biden administration, we don't know what's going to happen with Taliban. What is the Biden administration going to inherit in this sense?
A whole new security apparatus. They're going to have to figure it out themselves. Yes, that's correct. There should be a sharing of information on this with the new team. They should be knowing why they're withdrawing suddenly at this time, et cetera, et cetera. I'm just giving you what I think the president's perspective is on this.
Right.
I don't think Donald Trump would have withdrawn troops suddenly like this if he perceived it as a threat to the U.S.'s national security. I don't think he would do that, because if he does that, if there is a withdrawal, and the ramifications are terrorist, blowback on the United States, for instance, I think everybody knows where to point the finger, and that'll be at him, at his administration. I don't think he wants that. Yes, it is dangerous, though, no question about it, that there is no information being exchanged right now between the outgoing administration and the incoming one, and that is a matter of major concern.
And just on politics, just today, the Israel Prime Minister Netanyahu congratulated and talked to President-elect Joe Biden on U.S.-Israel relationship. When you look at that factor, what is that conveying?
That conveys he's accepting the new administration, and Israel traditionally is one of the strongest allies of the United States,
right?
And the other way is true as well. These two are the strongest allies on the planet, probably, the United States and Israel. And there is a huge Jewish population in the United States, and it's in Israel's interests, it's in the Jewish community's interests that relations between these two countries remain strong and perpetual, forever. And so, of course, the Benjamin Netanyahu would, of course, reach out to the new administration, and the new administration should reach out to Israel. They are our strongest allies, and ties should always be extremely strong. There should be the trust, no matter who's in power, between these two nations.
Yes. And finally, my last question to you is about the South Asian community. Right now, where do you think the South Asian community is going with all the chaos they're seeing in the nation? And how do you think their relationship is going to be with President-elect Biden's team moving forward?
I think, to answer your last question first, it's going to be fine. The South Asian American community will be absolutely fine. There are going to be a lot of people from the South Asian community who will be appointed to positions in the Biden administration, just as there were many Indian Americans, for instance, appointed in the Trump administration. So a lot of key positions are being considered, and they will have a lot of Indian Americans. Other South Asians will be in those positions as well. I'm expecting this already is shaping up to be a very diverse administration under Joe Biden. We've had some major campaign figures from the diverse community of the United States who have already been named as part of the core team coming into the new White House. Many of them Latinos, many of them African Americans, women, a sizable number of them women, African Americans, Latinos, and Asians. The Asian announcements I'm expecting very soon, and we'll be seeing a lot of people coming in. It's going to be a very different administration. I think it's going to be reflective of the whole country, the United States. And that's what I'm expecting right now from the Joe Biden administration. We're going to see some very interesting, the next 4 years are going to be extremely interesting for this whole country. It's going to show the world what the United States really is. I mean, I'm an optimist, as you know. I've always been an optimist. Even with Donald Trump, when he was there, I've always spoken optimistically about what he wants. In the end, I think Donald Trump wanted the best for America, still wants the best for America. Joe Biden wants the best for America and will want the best for America. So I think in the end, whoever leads us is going to want the very best for all Americans. And, there's no doubt about that.
Here's to hoping for a very diverse and inclusive America as we move forward. I truly, again, appreciate you for your time here on ITV Gold.
Thank you. I appreciate you having me on again.